Now,
Hmm.
onto the Game of the Year awards.
Yes.
I have never
Oh.
been quite so infuriated by Twitter, which is
damn.
saying something.
Yeah, that is saying something for you.
You make it sound like I just sit here in like a little troll cave. Just...
We
I
have
see bad takes,
93
so-
episodes of evidence.
Like, I have the ability to see really bad tweets and like not let it bother me, but sometimes I just see the most brain dead takes, and I'm like, who gave you access to the internet? Who thought that was a good idea? So essentially, Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year,
Deserved.
which I think anyone who's played most of the games on the nominated list kind of agrees with pretty unsurprisingly. They're like, yeah, no, that makes complete sense. It was a really, really good game. I liked it.
Yeah.
But then you've got a bunch of Sony,
PlayStation
Spider-Man,
fanboys.
yeah, PlayStation fanboys who were like, they were like taking clips of Baldur's Gate gameplay and comparing it to Spider-Man cutscenes. And we're like, how did this win over this? I'm like, if you cannot understand conceptually that games that look different can also be very good, you're not a gamer.
I
And
think.
I really hate the idea of gatekeeping games.
Hmm.
But if you are the kind of person who just plays Spider-Man,
God.
God of War, COD, and then FIFA, NBA, and Madden, and then you sit here and see that Baldur's Gate 3 is won, and you go, "What? That's stupid." They need to understand real quick. Spider-Man wasn't even coming second there. Based on what I've seen, Alan Wake was the winner if Baldur's Gate 3 didn't exist.
Yeah, see, I think Spider-Man might have come second.
But we need to just understand
But,
that games that look different
well,
can
yeah,
be equally as good.
the biggest proof that Baldur's Gate is fully deserving of that is like, let's be simple here. Without any predetermined knowledge, you would have heard Spider-Man 2, you're like, well, I'm playing that. Baldur's Gate 3, you weren't initially like, oh, I'm going to play that.
I didn't know it existed until it came out.
And then it's like, many people like you who had never played a turn-based game like that, had never played like a Dungeons and Dragons themed game, had never played anything or heard of Larian Studios, picked it up because you saw how well it was being received and then fell in love with it. And it's like, the fact that that game could bring in new people who had never tried those games before and they all love it shows that it was Game of the Year. Spider-Man 2 ain't doing that.
And also, Spider-Man was like 30 hours.
Yep.
It didn't have New Game Plus at launch.
Yep.
And I played over 100 hours of Starfield. At no point in Starfield did I encounter a game-breaking bug. I encountered bugs, but none that were game-breaking. I had to quit, relaunch, reload Spider-Man semi-regularly. Not enough for it to ruin the game for me, but I had to do it. There were times where an objective would be bugged the fuck out, and I had to reload my checkpoint so that I could actually progress.
I mean, I'd also be willing to say, and I don't even think this is that hot of a take, but I feel like Baldur's Gate 3 might have been the only fully complete game that released this year.
Yeah.
It didn't release and need like a series of patches to fix it or make
there was
it playable.
very, very early on, there was some problems in Act 3, but before 95% of people could even make it to Act 3 because of how much game there is, they were all fixed. Put it this way, I've played 30 hours of Spider-Man, and while I do need to go back and do some things, and I will play New Game Plus because I fucking love that game, I'm at 75, nearly 80 hours in Baldur's Gate 3. I'm only about 75% of the way through, and I'm desperately trying to find time to get back to it, but brain go brr, and there's new games.
I can sprint around and grab cash now.
Put it this way, Spider-Man 2's big thing, even if we like get away from raw gameplay and talk about the technologies behind it, their big thing was look at our super cool SSD. That is all marketing bullshit. The SSD that they have isn't magic.
No.
It's don't get me wrong, it's some very good technology they're using, and they're using it very well, and they're making the most of it. But it's nothing world changing. Larian had to build this entire dice system. And
Yep.
for those who don't know, building evenly weighted dice in computers is fucking rough.
Yep.
So difficult. A computer creating true randomness is actually impossible.
Yep.
So to get them to build dice that genuinely feel balanced, crazy.
Mm.
Like,
Well, it's like,
I don't like turn-based combat, which is absolutely fine. If you're like, I don't like turn-based combat, I'm not going to play BG3. I'm not saying you have to, but you have to respect that other people do like that. That game made me like turn-based combat, because when you get to sit there, and I've watched the same fight that everyone has to do eventually in the game, and I see 100 different people do it 100 different ways, that is fucking gaming. Spider-Man, you've got to do the same thing everyone else does.
Yeah.
In Spider-Man, you don't get, other than like just actual fight bits, you don't get to like do crazy different things there. It's just about like what gadgets you might use. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna set up grease all over this, and then when I start the fighting, I'm just gonna light it all on fire and burn everyone to death.
Well, yeah,
Or
and it's like,
set up a bunch of boxes and turn into an owlbear and jump down on everyone.
The other like way to look at it is like Spider-Man 2. Essentially, what you see is what you get. There is not much below the surface of what you would expect from a Spider-Man 2 game.
100%.
Baldur's Gate has so much depth to that game. Like, I've not played it yet, but like I've seen things where you can be a paladin oathbreaker, I think it is.
Yeah.
Which is like you're meant to be evil now. And there is a ending for if someone was to actually purposely pick every single good decision, like good morality decision. They do that, and they have a special ending for if an oathbreaker does that, because they knew someone would do that. Someone would see what would happen.
Because it's cool, but they're still going to do the right thing.
Yeah, and it's like there's so much depth there, and then it's like things like people have started making mods for it now. There is, although that game is top down and it's like turn based, someone's made a first person camera view. That game is more beautiful in first person than some RPGs, and you can't even play it in first person without a mod. And it's like the fact that the game can look that great in a camera angle it's not meant to be in is wild.
Wait, I spent 6, maybe even 7 hours losing a big battle because I'd accidentally, not realizing, made all of the bad decisions and put myself in a shit spot, which meant instead of just little battles occasionally, I had to do essentially a war battle.
Nice.
When I'm like not even level 4 yet, I've never played turn-based combat. I'm still learning. And I spent 7 hours because each attempt was taking like 40 minutes because I was getting so close to finishing it and then dying right near the end. You play Spider-Man for 7 hours, you're a quarter of the way done. In fact, I'm sure you can speedrun it and be done in less than that time now. Well, I could probably speedrun Spider-Man and be done in about 7 hours now.
It's just wild that people think Spider-Man was anywhere near close to beating Baldur's Gate.
I think Sony's marketing team will need a huge raise, because they have done a phenomenal job at convincing Sony fanboys that they make the best
games ever. I don't
even
think they had to do much convincing though, because the Sony fanboys will just lap up anything.
It's so crazy. It feels like we've moved away from the Game Awards, apart from, and it's not all Sony fans. I'm not saying it is, but there is still a large portion that from the PlayStation side who are still so invested in this console war bullshit, and I'm just over it. I'm so over it. Just accept that the game wasn't the best game this year. That's fine. But let's be honest, all of Sony's first party titles are the same game reskinned. And I say that as someone who is desperate to go back through now that I've got a PlayStation and play some of them games. So like, I'm not sitting here going, oh, I'm too good for these games. I'm gonna fucking play them games.
Yeah, I think that's also the other thing. Like, people need to realize, just because it didn't win Game of the Year doesn't make it a bad game.
100%.
Like, it's still a great game. It's just not as great as Baldur's Gate 3. Like, there can only be one
100%.
winner.
And I said that Baldur's Gate 3 is the best game. It's not the game I've had the most fun with this year. I had more fun with Starfield for my sins. That game, it nestled its way into my brain, and I'm scared to actually open it again in case I lose another 3 weeks of my life. But even as I was doing that and saying I'm having much more fun with Starfield and I love Starfield and this, that, and the other, I also sat there, I was like, but Baldur's Gate 3 is the best game this year. It's art. It is video games at their absolute highest art form.
There's a reason devs were tweeting being like, oh, this shouldn't be the expectation of gamers. Like, this is an unrealistic expectation for a studio to make. It's like, no, it's not.
And I now expect it.
Yeah.
This is now my expectation.
Do better. I will say, while we're on the Game Awards, I didn't watch it because I'll be honest, I forgot it was on until the next morning. The clip of the God of War voice actor saying my speech last year was longer than the Modern Warfare 3 campaign, hilarious. And the fact that the devs got salty about
Very
it,
salty devs.
also very hilarious.
Very salty devs, but also very salty like people who haven't worked on COD in like 10 years. They're like, I used to work at COD like a decade ago, and that is so uncalled for. It's like, my brother in Christ. There's been like 4 Activision lawsuits since you last worked there.
Bro, the COD you worked on doesn't exist anymore. Like that studio is completely different. Yeah, I just thought it was so funny that he made that comment.
But, and you're not even going to remember this, Horizontal, for this next bit.
Oh.